me anything about politics. So if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat and I will do my best to give you a great answer. So yeah, if there's anything you need to know about politics, all you got to do is put it in the chat and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you don't know too much about it. It can be like trying to learn a new language. And so some people, they don't really have places that they can go for learning about politics. And so that is what I am here for, y'all. And you don't got to worry about any kind of question is fine, you know? So if you would ask this question of somebody else, but you're worried, if I were going to ask my friend, then they would think I was a big old dum dum. You don't got to worry about that here. I'm not going to judge anybody for any question that they ask me, regardless of if it is simple or complicated or whatever. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. It can be like trying to learn a new language where, you know, there's all these three-letter agencies and we're just referring to people by their last names. And what if you don't know what reconciliation is? What if you don't know what a continuing resolution is? Who do you have that you can ask that question to? I'll tell you who. This fella right here, Jared Berenstein. So yeah, Marcia says, how did Dr. Jill Biden not know about Biden's cancer diagnosis? Marcia, what are we doing, Marcia? Are we being mean, Marcia? Because that's like the Don Jr. joke there. All right. If anybody's got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do. You're trying to be mean. You're trying to be mean to Dr. Jill Biden. That seems. I don't like that. You know, it's just a couple of old people trying to live out their golden years. You know. All right. Let's see here. All right. Yeah. There's no judgments here whatsoever. Even Marcia, I'm not judging you for that question one bit. So you don't got to worry about, if I ask this, he's going to think I'm some sort of cuck libtard, or if I ask this, he's going to think I'm some sort of, you know, MAGA lunatic. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you didn't vote. I'm just here to answer all of your good faith questions about, mean to MAGA. Yeah, Marcia. Yes, I got you. That's what I figured, you know, but you gotta check these things because you can't really tell tone when you are, you know, reading things on the internet. Yeah, those people are jerks. You know, I don't understand. I don't understand. It seems, but I mean, you know, if you got right wing media telling you how evil these people are, you probably rejoice in being mean to those people. Well, for everybody else who just arrived, hello, my name is Jared. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics. There's no such thing as a dumb question. So you don't got to worry about answering me anything. Michael says, no, we have eyeballs. We can see. I don't know what that means, Michael. So yeah, Liz says, how do you feel about America's apparent departure from Israel? I do not believe that America has departed from Israel. I believe we are continuing to send them money and weapons. The Trump administration is even more forgiving of the Netanyahu administration than the Biden administration was. He's openly calling for ethnically cleansing the people of Palestine, and Netanyahu is saying, "I'm going to do that." You know, so yeah, I do not believe that America has departed from Israel. All right, thank you for your questions, though, everybody, so far. Let's see here. Yes, I agree with you, Ooga Booga. All right, if anybody's got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. I know the politics can be really intimidated. Marcia says, did you not see Trump's tweet today? Did he? I'm not answering questions from you. I do not care for the things you did during your freak offs. I saw the tweet that Trump had where he was like saying, you know, I really hope for a speedy recovery for President Trump. And I'm like, you didn't write that. One of your aides wrote that. Dan Davis says, what will happen if Trump refuses to obey the Supreme Court? That's an open question, Dan, and all of us are extremely worried about it. So here's the thing. The judiciary has a branch of law enforcement that they can use to enforce their directives. It's the U.S. Marshal's Office. Unfortunately, they also fall under the purview of the Department of Justice, which is currently being run by Trump lackeys. Now, a lot of people know that the Attorney General is Pam Bondi, but there has been some reporting from the New York Times that Stephen Miller is actually running the Department of Justice from the White House, and that is grossly unethical. There is supposed to be division between the White House and the Justice Department so that the president is not directing investigations into his rivals. But apparently, the White House under Trump doesn't give a shit about, you know, being ethical, and that is a shock to not me, that's for damn sure. So yeah, I think the best thing that we can do is prepare as citizens for a likely showdown between the judiciary and the White House, where we as citizens need to demand that the White House obeys the directives of the Supreme Court. Hey3N says, do you think it's bad for people to choose a president just because the political party they are in? I do not, Hayden, because when you are voting for whoever's going to be the party's nominee, then I think you can really dig into who that person is. But once you have the party nominee, then there are more things to consider besides who that person is. Like, what are the policy priorities of that political party? Too many P's, too much alliteration, in my opinion. The Republican Party is all about cutting taxes for the rich and cutting regulations that make sure that our air is safe to breathe and our food is safe to eat and our water is safe to drink. And the Democratic Party is pro-union and pro-environment and is not going to increase the financial burden on the lower class. And yeah, I do not believe that you need to take whoever the nominee is in account for that. I would much rather have any Democratic president nominating Supreme Court justices than I would any Republican president nominating Supreme Court justices. So yeah, I don't think there's anything bad with that at all. Aiden says, do you think Elon was a good choice? No, I do not. And I don't even know who you're talking about choosing him. Do you think Trump chose him or Republicans chose him or what? But anybody who chose Elon did a bad job. Hayden 8 says, so you would say it's better to vote based on political party or what values they affirm? In the general, yeah, but in the primary, vote for the person. Blah blah says, which war criminal did you vote for? I didn't vote for a war criminal. I voted for Kamala Harris. 10K Asa says, anything good that Trump has done in office so far? Not as far as I can tell. Zay Maruka, good to see you again over on Twitch. Scott123 says, speculation on the midterms. So polling suggests, and polling is not predictive, it is just a snapshot in time. Polling suggests that the Democrats have a good chance of taking the House, but they do not have enough support to take back the Senate, or it's going to be a close game for the Senate. But we can change that if people like you and me, do the work of getting people to go out and vote for Democrats in the Senate and the House. Then we can increase those margins. 10K Assis says, I'm on the left too, but that can't be true. What can't be true? That Trump hasn't done anything good in office so far? I do not believe that we need to give grace to the Trump administration, who has been violently attacking our country for, over a decade. Why do I need to sift through the mountain of shit that is the Trump administration to look for the good things that he may have accidentally done? So yeah, I do not believe the Republican Party never gets any blame, and the Democratic Party never gets any credit. I'm not going to be a part of that problem by looking for the one piece of silver lining in the mountain of shit that is the Trump administration. Zay Maruka says, is it true that America is or still trying to get Canada as the 51st state? So America is not, but Trump is talking about it a lot. It is not a priority for America or Americans. It is just something that the Trump administration has to do because they're fucking psychopaths. 10 Chaosis says, you can be honest and see what good is done on both sides. Here's the thing, man. If you got one person who is stabbing you consistently and another person who is cutting your hair, do you really got to look for the positive elements in the dude that is stabbing you? I don't think that is productive. I don't think it's a productive use of our time. I don't think it's productive for the cultural narrative around politics. Spectator says, do you believe we are better off with the broken system that we have always had? I'm not really sure what that question means, Spectator, but there are things that are wrong with the American government before Trump even got involved, and we can absolutely fix those if we vote for better politicians. Let's see here. Curtis Carmen says, when will Musk get deported? Probably never, because he gave Trump a lot of money and Trump is in charge of who gets deported, basically. Okay, Curtis answered that. Francis Kakif says, thoughts on Amy Coney Barrett. So I do not like any of the right-wing Supreme Court justices. And there are some people who are looking at the way that Amy Coney Barrett has voted since she has been sat as evidence that maybe she is not as shitty as a person as, we maybe predicted that she would be. But I have a different theory about that. So number one, she voted for the Dobbs decision, and there are women who are dead because of that, so fuck her. fuck her all the way to wherever the fuck she came from. And number two, I don't really believe that she is doing any of this out of the grace of her heart. The Republican justices recognize that they have a supermajority, so they can lose one justice on every decision, and that justice is the one that gets to appear not like a psychopath on that day. So they all take turns, you know. I think it's Gorsuch is the one who's always voting the right way for Native American rights, and Amy Coney Barrett sometimes votes the right way. They're just a chance of peace on who gets to not be a psychopath, because then they get to be like, oh, you know, I tried and I voted with the liberal justices, and I am proving to you that I am, you know, and a subjective, I'm an objective judge in this process, because look, you know, but they still win the cases. The conservatives still get the outcomes that they want, but they all get to appear as though they are, you know, being impartial. Let's see here. Blah blah says war criminal supporter. Blah blah. I don't know what you're talking about. Blah blah. Can you explain? Stale says, how are the people in power held accountable? Elections and inspectors general and the judiciary. Now, the Republican Party has managed to hack and take over all of those means of accountability. So it is very infrequent that Republicans feel accountability for the shit that they have done. Blah blah says Kamala was actively committing genocide and you voted for that. That's not true. Blah blah. That is not true at all. She was the vice president. She wasn't doing shit. Blah blah. So you can miss me with that. Stale says, what's stopping these things from working together? I don't know what you mean, Stale. Yeah, blah blah. If you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you, because all you're doing is spamming in the comments. I know exactly what you're doing. I know you're trying to make it seem like both parties are the same, or that there's no good choices here, and that the lesser of two evils is still evil. But the fact is that because Trump won the election, there are more Palestinians who are dead or starving or suffering than if Kamala Harris had been elected. So, you know, you can take that, you can put that in your pipe and smoke it if you like. Stale says, under what system do the people actually hold the power? In a democratic system, you know, like we vote for the people who make the decisions. That is our power, and we're able to replace those people if they are not doing the right thing. But we need systems to be working together in order for that to work. Like we need a healthy, fourth estate. We need journalism in order to know what is going on, and we need billionaires to not be weaponizing the information environment in order to cloud our intake of information in order to push us towards their policy priorities. Chill Collins says, where you get your evidence to make that claim? What claim? Oh, that there are more Palestinians who are dead or suffering because of Trump than if Kamala Harris. Well, Trump administration is allowing the Israeli government to do more of the things that they were doing under the Biden administration. The Trump administration has resumed sending Israel 2,000-pound bombs that stopped under Biden, and he canceled sanctions that we had against illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. The Biden administration was putting pressure on the Netanyahu government to stop doing war crimes. Not enough, in my opinion, and also reporting has come out that says that they were doing even less than we thought they were doing, but they were still doing some. The Trump administration, by contrast, is openly telling Netanyahu that it is cool if you ethnically cleanse all of Palestine, and Netanyahu, in response, is putting his foot on the fucking gas, and he is saying, we will do whatever the fuck we want. We are going to completely empty out that area. That is all going to be Israel now. And what Trump got in exchange is he's going to get to build fucking shitty-ass Trump towers in that area there. So, yeah, right now, during the Biden administration, they built a fucking pier to try to get aid in to the people in Palestine, and that is not happening. None of that shit is happening during the Trump administration. Those people, there are people who are starving and dying of malnourishment and dehydration and fucking bombs and shit like that. And the Trump administration isn't doing anything to try to stop that. Gen X Marnie says they are still committing ethnic cleansing. Chill Collins says, you really think Trump did that so he can build a hotel there? Yeah, that's literally what he said, Chill Collins. I speak sarcasm, so I know exactly what you're doing, but the fact of the matter is, like, all the things I'm saying are right, so you can miss me with it. Let's see here. Sweet Caroline, good to see you again. Spectator says, more people have died with Biden than any war, sir. That is not accurate at all. Callahan says, MAGA. That is not a question, Callahan, so you are out of here. All right. Stale Still says, how do you solve a forward-facing good politician from gaining power in democracy? How do you solve a forward-facing good politician but corrupt from gaining power in democracy? That's a really good question. Stale. So I think the first step that we need in electing our representatives is make sure that they are at least telling us the correct things. So the Republican Party is out there saying, we are going to increase the cost of goods for you, and we're going to cut taxes for the billionaire class. We're going to cut regulations that make it so that your air is safe to breathe, and your water is safe to drink, and your food is safe to eat, and your medications are safe to take. And I'm going to put Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of HHS, and he doesn't fucking know shit about shit. And now measles is fucking spiking everywhere, and fucking COVID is spiking, and bird flu is spiking, and fucking tuberculosis is spiking, and all that fucking shit. The Democratic Party is at least saying that they are not going to do that. And we need to reward the politicians who are at least saying the right thing. Once we solve that problem of getting people in government to actually do the things that they say they're going to do, then we can start judging these politicians based on the outcomes and the things that they actually do. So we discovered that Senator Menendez, a Democrat, was wildly corrupt. He had gold bars in his pocket, and we fucking got rid of him. That is how democracy is supposed to work. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is fucking accepting grift after grift. He made $3 billion, off of fucking presidential meme coins. He got a $400 million plane from Qatari royalty, and the Republican Party isn't doing shit about that because they believe in party over country. Let's see here. Scott123 says, how do we shore up democracy after Trump's second term? Why didn't we after his first? So Scott123, that's a very big question. I think the main problem that we are all suffering from as a country right now is billionaire influence. They have so much money that we can't even fathom it. It's like trying to hold in your head the size difference between the sun and an ant. Income inequality is the fucking issue. These billionaires are using all of their power, money, and influence to try to cloud the information sphere with as much propaganda and bullshit as they possibly can, because they know that they make more money when Republicans are in office. And they know that if people had all the correct information, then Republicans would never get into office. So they flood the airwaves with bullshit. They have taken over all of our social media channels with propaganda to either convince you to vote for Republicans or to not vote. So how do we solve that problem? We have to talk to each other. We, the citizens, have to actually do the work of communicating to our fellow citizens, our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, our family members, make sure that they are not buying the bullshit that the billionaires are trying to force feed us. Once we have that information, then we continue the work of organizing and activating and trying to elect better politicians. Now, the Democratic Party is the platform that most of the country agrees with. They just think that the Democratic Party is worse than it is because of billionaire propaganda. So once we can get people past that and actually elect a whole bunch of Democrats, and we can, elect the Republican Party into existence by not voting for them, we can vote them out of existence is a better way of saying that. Then we can actually start working on making the Democratic Party better and getting rid of politicians like Nancy Pelosi who say that it's okay that people in office do insider trading, and getting rid of ineffectual leaders like Chuck Schumer, and putting forward more aggressive and progressive candidates like Sanders and AOC and Jasmine Crockett and Maxwell Frost and shit like that. Yeah, that's the way that we fix it, But the problem is that it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of people doing that work in order for us to do that. So I hope if anybody is here watching for the first time, that you will join me in doing this work. I'm out here fucking 5 days a week trying to connect with people, trying to activate and organize and recruit people for this specific fight, to make sure that people recognize that the Democratic Party is better than they think it is and the Republican Party is worse than they think it is. To recognize that because of the information environment that we have, Democrats never get any credit and Republicans never get any blame. And that we have to solve that problem because billionaires have so much fucking money. Again, the sun versus an ant. Like, we don't have a way of conceptualizing how fucking rich these people are. Only to say that income inequality is worse right now than it was during the Gilded Age, which is an age that was named after how bad income inequality was. So yeah, please join me, everybody. join the fight. Join my Discord. Let's do this shit, man. Like, I don't need you to follow me. I just need you to do the fucking work. All right, Chris Jill Collins says the country sent a message. No one voted for Democratic ideas. It was a rejection of the last 4 years. Jill Collins, that is inaccurate. If in exit polls we discovered that voters, especially voters in swing states, had inaccurate ideas about what the different political platforms stood for, and that is again because of misinformation and propaganda that has been spread by the billionaire class in order to help the Republican Party. So yeah, but we know that people have a positive view of the Democrats platform, just not of the Democratic Party. We know this because they vote overwhelmingly for ballot referendums that mirror the Democratic platform. So, in Missouri, they voted to, make it so that women could get abortions. And in, other states, they are voting for garden supplies being legal, if you catch my drift. Yeah, and the Republican politicians who are in charge of those states are just reversing those decisions. Like, oh, you voted for this? Well, fuck you, get out of here. The people in North Carolina voted for a more liberal-leaning state Supreme Court justice, and the Republican Party tried for 6 months to undo that election. So the Republican Party doesn't give a shit about what you guys want. They're just going to do whatever the fuck they want, and what they want is what's good for the billionaire class. Law Guy says, blah, 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 shaking my head. If you don't ask a question, Law Guy, I'm going to boot you. I don't care if you have a different political opinion than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. Spider-Man 1958 says, if you didn't want slavery back in the day and still, there wouldn't be a Republican Party. If you didn't want slavery back in the day and still, there wouldn't be a Republican Party. I mean, that seems a little overly simplistic, Spider-Man. Like, there are a lot of people who vote Republican who do not want there to be slavery anymore. But again, that is the consequence of billionaire propaganda. Law Guy says, what the hell are you talking about? Don bother booting me. A Spectator says, the Dems did whatever they want, and you know it, sir. Yeah, and what they wanted was the largest investment in green energy in our nation's history, the most pro-union president and National Labor Relations Board, consumer finance protection, agencies that stop deadly diseases from coming into this country, lowering medication costs. Yeah, all that stuff was great for the 99%. Cream Meme says, is no tax on overtime likely? It's not in the bill that the Republicans are currently trying to pass, so probably not. James 1028 says, I'm a Republican, so what, James? Ask a question. I'm not going to yell at you or boot you or anything. This is what I'm doing here, man. I'm talking about people. Malcolm says, it's in another bill. I'm going to give you my most skeptical okay, bro, in response to that. Tell me the name of the bill. What is it? Is it HR blank number? Is it S blank number? Tell me. Bobo says it's kind of in the bill, but you have to get it back after doing taxes, so good luck with that. I have not seen that in any reporting, Bobo. Everything that I have read says that no tax on ticks, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime is not in the Republicans' financial bill that they are currently working on. Loopy Lou says, how do we convince the DNC to invest in left-wing media so we can combat the lies and propaganda? I don't know if it's the DNC's job to invest in, progressive media. They don't invest in other news media, like they don't invest in the Associated Press and the New York Times, as far as I can tell. But I think it is the same way that it's up to us to spread this message. I think it is up to us to support progressive media. James 1028 says, here's my question. Why is Trump so overhated? I think he's underhated, James. Like, we have not seen somebody so destructive and so corrupt. And, the fact that his, approval rating never goes below like 38% is evidence to me that he is not hated nearly enough, James. And I'm happy to tell you why people like me who read the news are hating on Trump exactly as much as he deserves. But let's engage on it, man. I'm not trying to tell you you're a jerk or stupid or anything. Let's see here. Chill Collins says, are you joking? The left controls 99% of the mainstream media. That is inaccurate, Chill Collins. 99%, all of mainstream media is owned by the billionaire class, and the billionaire class is incentivized to get Republicans elected because it helps their bottom line and it pads their pocket. So yeah, and all of if you examine all the headlines, they tend to water down all the negative headlines around the Republicans because they want to appear as impartial as humanly possible. So they water down their negative headlines around Republicans and they overhype their negative headlines around Democrats. It's the reason why there were like 10 times as many negative stories about Hillary Clinton's emails versus like the dozens of corruption investigations into the Trump administration in 2015. Dude says, how come Dems didn't vote in the last election? Propaganda and misinformation. They were told, they were tricked into thinking that not voting would either be a great way to communicate to the parties that they want something different, or they thought they were tricked into thinking that they needed to send a message about Gaza, or they were tricked into thinking that Trump would be better for the people of Palestine than Democrats. And all three of those things were lies. Miguel A. Palma says, can you just discuss the salient points in the tax bill? I haven't read the bill yet. I have only read reports about the bill. But I have read them from very credible and reliable sources. And those sources, the bottom line is tax cuts for the rich, decreased funding for all government agencies except for the Pentagon, and let's see here, cutting regulations, that make sure that our water is safe to drink and our food is safe to eat and shit like that. James 1028 says, all I know is that the border is essentially shut down and that we're on better terms globally. James, I don't know where you got that from, because literally every country hates us now. Every country thinks worse of us now than they did before Trump was elected. Also, the border being essentially shut down is not a good thing. Immigrants are a net positive on our country. Now, you might not think that because of propaganda that you have, read, or maybe you're a racist person. Like, I don't know. But yeah, the border was not open during the Biden administration. That was right-wing propaganda. And all that the Trump administration has done, they haven't stopped any illegal immigration from happening. They've actually increased illegal immigration because they have made legal immigration all but impossible for everybody except for rich people and white people. Let's see here. Dude says, Dems were tricked, you say. Yeah, a lot of them, 8 million. But, it's important to recognize that if you look at all of the cheating that the Republican Party did in 2024 and all of the money that the billionaires put into the election in order to try to steal it, and all of the illegal shit that Elon Musk was doing to try to win the election, and all of the propaganda that was convincing Democrats not to vote, the Republicans still only won by like 1 or 2 percentage points. So we still have the advantage, but we just have to undo all of the cheating and bullshittery that the billionaire class in the Republican Party is doing to steal elections. James 1028 says, my only concern is with the cost of living. More immigration means higher costs for homes, etc. That is inaccurate, James. If you have more immigration, you have more workers. And more workers means more competition in the workforce, and things are able to get done easier that way. Also, you have more supplies if you do not have the kind of stupid tariffs that the Trump administration is currently putting on the housing market. Additionally, tariffs are increasing cost of living for every American, and we're seeing it in real time. It's going to be really fucking people over the next couple of months. And last thing I would say about that is, say cost of living. What else was it? Higher cost of homes, etc. A report about home building just came out today, James, about how builders are not wanting to build right now because they're not confident that they're going to be able to put people in those homes because of things like the tariffs and the uncertainty of the economic climate. Is anything that I'm saying registering with you? You don't have to agree with me, but just acknowledge that I'm making points that you maybe want to give a Google and double check. Tyro, good to see you again, says, how come Trump only wins against women? That is a really excellent question. Maybe America is a little bit misogynistic and, what do you call it? And racist. Dolores 30 says liberals are the worst to ask anything about politics. Number one, that's not true. Number two, that's not a question. I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. All right. Diego says legal immigration. Yeah, such a thing exists. You know how people on the right like to say, we don't care if they come here, we just want them to come the right way? That's what legal immigration is. Cindy Dogtit says, why aren't people blaming Trump for creating Operation Warp Speed? I guess because the people who would be upset about Operation Warp Speed also don't give a shit about what Trump does. Like, they don't care. They support him no matter what. They could literally take a shit on his face. And it's not their fault. Like, they're not dumb. It's just that Republicans have defunded education in a way that makes them much more susceptible to misinformation and propaganda, and they are currently stuck in information loopholes. They're in a bubble of right-wing misinformation that is constantly telling them that Trump is God, Trump is king, Trump is doing no wrong. All right, scrolling down to the bottom, dude says admitting Dems are gullible just made my day, dude. Okay, dude. Well, number one, you're not asking a question, and if you keep on not asking questions, I'm going to boot you. Number two, Republicans are just as, if not more gullible than Democrats are. I'm trying to be magnanimous here by admitting that Democrats got tricked into either not voting or voting for Republicans. So don't make me regret that by being mean here. You know, like I'm the guy who's reaching across the aisle to try to appeal to right-wing voters and people that don't disagree with me, and you're just sitting here taking a victory lap. You understand, like you're not winning here, right? In the court of public opinion. All right, dude says sorry to hit your feelings, buddy, and that is the last straw. Congratulations, you're out of here. All right, Barrett says why? Hey, I'm a cowboy. Barrett says, why is our government being lobbied by foreign nations? Because America is extremely powerful and wealthy, and when other nations lobby, they could potentially get the American government to do things that are good for their countries. Now, ideally, you have a president who puts America first. But if the Qataris are giving the president $400 million jets, and the Saudis are giving them money, and the fucking who else? Fucking Russia is giving them election assistance and shit like that. And you have a president who is as corrupt as the Trump is. Then we suddenly have to start worrying about if all this money means that he's going to start doing things that hurt Americans in favor of Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Russia, etc. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Harry Rochester says, do you think Trump responded good to Biden's unfortunate health updates? I mean, he responded good in the sense that he handed his phone to somebody else and said, hey, why don't you write something that doesn't make me sound like a fucking asshole? Nicholas says, do you believe that BRICS is based? Parentheses, hint they are. I don't know. You know, it's like a lot of the nations that are in BRICS aren't great. Is it good that sometimes other nations challenge America's hegemony? Sure. But if it's a worse person, like, I don't know if that's based, my friend. Zach says, when did this party switch? I heard something about that the other day, had opposite views at some point. Yes, so this happened during the Lyndon Johnson administration. So JFK gets assassinated, Lyndon Johnson takes over. And the civil rights movement has been going on for a long time, and suddenly all this legislation gets passed that is guaranteeing civil rights for people of color and shit like that. And Lyndon B. Johnson decides to sign these, bills into law. And as he signs them, he literally says, like, anecdotally, he says to, like, whoever's next to him, he's like, oh, we just lost the South, meaning that is the moment that the Democratic Party no longer represents the racist white people in the South. And now Nixon develops this thing with his team called the Southern Strategy, where they basically say, okay, well, we'll be the racist now, and then we will be able to do whatever the fuck we want, and the racists will just continue voting for us because we're the party that represents those interests. I hope that answered your questions. That answered your question, Zach. Feel free to Google anything I just told you to double check. But as far as I know, that is pretty darn accurate. Barrett says, does it make you uncomfortable that foreign nations pay off even local and low-level politicians? 100% it does. You know, that's why I want Democrats in office, because they are the only ones who are serious about things like campaign finance laws and lobbying laws and shit like that. The Trump administration is literally staffing their government with illegal foreign agents like fucking Mike Flynn, so and they're dismantling the teams that make sure that foreign bribery and corruption doesn't happen. And Trump is literally doing it himself by accepting that fucking plane from Qatar. Dan Blackwood says, and the Republican Party admitted to / apologized for all of this in 2006. I don't remember that happening, Dan, but you are the fucking goat of this live, so I trust that that is an accurate thing that you just said. Barrett says, it's crazy that Democrats would be considered right-wing in Europe. Yeah, but we also have a very strong and growing progressive wing that is much more in line with the leftists in Europe. Danny says, what is your opinion to gun laws and the Constitution? When, I guess that's supposed to make me louder or something. When gun enthusiasts talk about the Second Amendment, they often skip over the well-regulated part. of it and only focus on the shall not be infringed part of the Second Amendment. And this is one of those things where it's like we could just have this semantic argument back and forth about, oh, does the Second Amendment mean it should be well regulated? Or the Second Amendment, does any regulation mean that it goes against the shall not be infringed parts of the Second Amendment? I don't think any of that shit actually matters. I think it's dumb when people argue about that. Let's instead talk about the things that we can agree on. 70% of this country believes in common sense gun control legislation, but because of billionaire propaganda, they are convinced that what the Democratic Party wants to do is, quote unquote, take your guns away. And then they vote for Republicans based exclusively on that. What the Democratic Party wants is the kind of common sense gun control legislation that we can all agree on. Like, why not make it so that you need a license to own a gun? Why not have universal background checks so that people who have poor mental health or a history of violence can't get access to weapons? Why don't we have people that own guns have to buy insurance the same way that you have to have insurance if you want to drive a car? Like, all of that seems like a way to potentially decrease gun violence, and it would not infringe on anybody's right to own a gun. So yeah, that seems like the move to me, you know. Barrett says, "Are you against the legal manufacture of weapons without paperwork at home?" I am not. I am not for ghost guns. I am against ghost guns. That is not the move, shall we say? Let's see here. Miguel A. Palma says, "You are amazing, the Shapiro of the left. How do we encourage discernment?" First of all, I do not consider, thank you, Miguel, but I do not consider being called the Shapiro of the left a compliment, because Shapiro is completely full of shit. He knows that he's lying to people, but he has to continue up this fucking charade because that's the side of the bread that his buttered on, you know? I fucked up that expression, but you know what I'm saying. Like, he gets paid to tell people these fucking lies, and he knows that he's full of shit. He is admitted that he is full of shit. I don't have any evidence of that. I've just heard that anecdotally. So yeah, like, how do we encourage discernment? I'm guessing what you mean, Miguel A. Palma, is how do we get people to actually start examining their priors and start giving the Democratic Party the credit they deserve and start voting for Democrats at the rate that they deserve? The answer is that we have to do that work, because there is no organization in the world that is powerful enough to combat the billionaires' propaganda machine. They have been building it for decades. They have gotten very good at it. I think that it is encouraging to recognize that despite all the billions of dollars that they put in, they still only beat us by about 1 to 2 percentage points in any given election. So all we have to do is do the work of dismantling that machine, and suddenly we will have a better country. Cave Dweller says, "What's up with the eyeliner JD Vance wears?" You know, I do not believe in shaming people for however they choose to identify. And if JD Vance decides to identify as a man who wears mascara, I say go for it, JD. Let's see here. Miguel A. Palma says, "Getting Hispanics not to vote against their interests." Not getting everybody to vote against their interests, you know? The Republican Party does best with the uneducated and undereducated, which is growing as the Republican Party continues to defund education and the billionaire class continues to make higher education more and more expensive. So when Republicans increase their voter share of the Latino community, of the African American community, of the LGBTQ community, etc., that is not to say that those groups of people are uneducated. It is just that everybody in this country is becoming less educated. And so people in those groups are getting sort of like collected into that now group of people who are uneducated or undereducated. All right. Carson says, "Republican or Democrat?" Democrat. Nicholas says, "Which countries in BRICS aren't good?" The only one I don't like is India. I mean, they're all a little, you know, not democracy, freedom centric. You know, like, they're all a little like on the, we're flirting with right wing authoritarianism, you know. Barrett says, "I personally think it's a mental health crisis." You know, I would be a much more amenable to that argument if the same party that wasn't standing guns so hard, Barrett, wasn't also the party that was making it difficult for people to get mental health care and making it difficult for us to keep track of people who have mental health problems and not selling them guns. Florine says, "Reform or revolution?" ¿Por qué no los dos, Florine? We can do both. We can 100% do both. Miguel A. Palma says, "Easy, Tiger. That is where we are going. Weak democracy, etc." Yeah, no, I agree. That's where we are also. We are a part of that problem. Cave Dweller says, why doesn't Trump care about the coal miners? Because Trump literally only cares about himself. You could put any group of people in that sentence and it would make exactly as much sense. Voodoo, which says, why or how can we push them to impeach now? So it is unlikely that there is any amount of political pressure that will convince elected Republicans to actually go forward with voting to impeach Donald Trump. That does not mean that we shouldn't do it. We should be hounding every elected Republican and demanding that they impeach Donald Trump. Unfortunately don't have any Republican representatives in my district or state, and so I can't be part of that movement, but I can encourage all of you people out there in the internet to be part of that movement. And if you are represented by any elected Republicans, you should 100% be blowing up their phone lines. I'm saying this in the metaphorical sense. I do not condone violence of any kind. But yeah, you should be hounding them on the phone, in person. I believe in the they should not know a moment of peace philosophy of this. Of course, again, reiterating that I do not condone any kind of violence whatsoever. But you can go to their offices, you can protest, you can, do all of the legal things to make your unhappiness known and registered with them, because they work for you. You know, you are their boss. So yeah, the best way that we can get Donald Trump impeached is just to vote for Democrats in the midterms in 2026. And so it just depends on what kind of work you want to do right now. Do you want to do the work of showing up to your Republican representative's office and repeatedly demanding that they impeach Donald Trump and hounding them about that, or do you want to do the work of recruiting people to vote for more Democrats and replace that person who is not taking your phone calls or not having town halls with a Democrat who will actually listen to the will of the voters? Let's see here. Jay says, "What are some arguments against raising the federal minimum wage that you've seen?" I mean, it's all Jay. It's all billionaire propaganda. It is all, oh my god, if you raise the minimum wage, then our businesses are going to go out of business, and you're not going to be able to, we're not going to be able to pay our employees, and we're going to have to lay everybody off, and we're going to have to increase prices in order to make up the difference, and so you're not going to be able to afford anything. But all of that shit is a lie. They have said that for every time we have tried to do anything to push back against billionaire power, they use the same bullshit excuses, and every time they lose that argument, we are proven right, and they are proven wrong. So that's it. That's all it is. Carmine says, "Are you going to read the new Biden book? Oh, the one that Jake Tapper came out with? I don't know. Like, I think it would just make me too mad. I think it's clear based on what I've read about the book already that there were staffers who knew that Biden's decline was precipitous and were lying about it, and that is fucking infuriating because I was one of the people who was taking them on their word and telling people like, hey, Biden. People say that Biden is still sharp as a whip. And even if he wasn't, it is still better to vote for a pile of Democratic dusty old bones than it is for a fucking alive fascist like Donald Trump. And those people turned me into a fucking liar, So, yeah, it's not the top of my list. I got a couple other books that I want to get through. Yeah, I'm not going to read it, and I'll definitely read the synopses. I'm sure there will be a bunch of articles coming out with the bullet points of how much these fucking assholes lied to us. Anthony Del Rato says, "I definitely think Democrats will be taking back Congress in the midterms." I mean, that's what polling says, Anthony, but I want you to do more than definitely think that will happen. I want you to make that happen. I want you to join me in becoming part of the movement to recruit people to not only vote for Democrats, but those people then should recruit other people to vote for Democrats, and it starts spreading, like the way that good information should be spreading. So yeah, let's do the work, man. Let's do the work together. Cave Dweller says, "What are Robert F. Kennedy's job qualifications?" Well, he told Trump that he thinks he's great, and that's basically it. Anthony, I'm glad to hear that, man. Thank you for being part of the struggle. Blue Dot says, "That really makes me angry. Be honest with us. We can take it." What makes you really angry, Blue Dot? Badger75, TikTok ref says, "Y'all part of a movement, right? A bowel movement." Wow. Boy, oh boy. Badger says, 75 says, "Republicans argue that raising tax on corporations raises prices, but tariffs don't." What? Yeah, I'm with you, Badger75. Cave Dweller says, is JFK Jr. a DEI hire? No. What is the abbreviation that we can use for a I told Trump that he was a genius, so he hired me. That's that's the kind of hire that he is. Blue Dot says, them lying about Biden's cognitive state. Yeah, I don't think this is a problem that was endemic in the Democratic Party. I think it was a few high-level staffers. That's my prediction. That's my opinion, but I could be wrong about that. DUI hire, excellent, Dan Blackroyd. Once again, goaded up. Alrighty, let's see here. Nicholas says, Nicholas, I'm worried about answering that question because of the platform that I'm currently on, but I think you should do a little Googling on that because I think that information is widely available. Truth Teller says, why was Biden and the people behind the auto pen so corrupt? Truth Teller, I do not believe that what you just said was accurate at all. All right, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Diego Vargas, good to see you again. So Republicans voted no on reconciliation bill because it wasn't mean enough. So that was a reporting that came out before the weekend. Apparently there was another session where they started actually working out some of the details. And so, that bill is still alive and well, unfortunately. We just have to wait and see what the final version looks like. Nicholas says, Google what? Yeah, give that a Google, Nicholas. Give that a Google. Let's see here. Cave Dweller says, did Trump have more accusers in the Catholic Church? No, but it's definitely a close game. Chris says, what are your thoughts on our current debt crisis? We've crossed the debt ceiling for the 78th time. We could take a massive cut out of the debt by just taxing billionaires and multimillionaires. The Republican Party isn't going to do that. They're actually going to cut taxes on the top 1% and the most profitable corporations in existence. And that is just going to increase the debt crisis. Now, if instead we close tax loopholes for massively profitable corporations and we increase taxes on the wealthy and we start investing in people, then we suddenly have more tax revenue coming in from poor and working class and middle class Americans. Part of the reason why sales tax isn't covering it these days is because people can't afford to buy shit. When you give money to a billionaire, they stash it in the Cayman Islands. When you give money to a poor person, they use it to buy the things that they need for their life. And that strengthens the economy. It's like that old fucking Biden meme. It's good for the economy, hurts no one, helps the economy. Who knew that dude was old? So yeah, that's the way you do it. You got to build the economy from the bottom up, the way that Bidenomics was doing it, instead of just doing more trickle-down economics that we have proven for decades and decades does not fucking work whatsoever. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you being here. Dylan Giacometto says, what are large ranches that are evaluated as multimillionaires but don't actually make that? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. What about large ranches that are evaluated as multimillionaires but don't actually make that? I'm not really sure. I don't know what that means, my man. Like, are you talking about literal ranches? Like, you're talking about like farms that are supposedly multi-million-dollar farms but don't actually bring in enough revenue? Like, obviously that is not, we should not be making farmers bankrupt because of tax revenue, but there are people who have a net worth of $200 billion that I think could stand to be only worth $999 million. I would not cry a single fucking tear if they lost all of that money. And instead that went into, schools and fire departments and shit like that. Dylan Giacometto says, when you're talking about taxing wealthy, that's what I'm asking. Yeah, this is something that the Republicans have done for a really long time, where they say that when the Democratic Party says they want to tax rich people, what they mean is the middle class who are barely holding on. They're going to tax you. They're going to tax you to death. They're going to take your fucking farm. That's not what we mean. We mean the top 1%, the people who are buying fucking golden yachts and taking their fucking private jets to in between their 10 fucking mega mansions. That's who we want to tax. Alrighty. Diego Vargas says, how did Arizona vote for a Gallego but rejected Harris? That's a really good and very specific question, Diego Vargas, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't dug into those, what do you call it? I haven't dug into that polling data. Turbo Pish says, don't be salty. I don't think I'm being salty. I think I'm being a pretty good guy, Jimmy Stewart says. All right. Anybody else got any questions? Let me know in the chat. And in the meantime, I want to thank y'all for being here. Thank you all for the questions, for the comments, for the gifts, for the follows, for the likes. I appreciate all of the support that y'all want to give me because it is your support that allows me to do this show 5 days a week. And I do it because it's part of the work and I believe in the work. So I hope that you will join me in doing the work. You can, be a part of my Patreon if you like. You can buy things from my store if you like. You can find that shit on my website, jaredberenstein.com. You can subscribe and you can send gifts and, whatever else. But you don't have to do any of that. If you just want to sit here and watch and like and share, that's fine with me too. If there were any questions that I was not able to get to on this chat that you still really want to ask me, my DMs are open, and you can also email me through my website, jaredberenstein.com. And just please do the work. Guys, please join me in doing the work because I can't do it all by myself. I on a really good day, I got something like 300 viewers on TikTok and then a handful on the other platforms that I stream on, and that's not enough. That is not enough. I'm not saying I need more followers. I need more people out there talking to people in real life, making sure that they're not believing the fake news and making sure that they are an activated and engaged voter who is prepared to vote for Democrats in the midterm elections. So yeah, do the work, guys. Let's all do the work. Badger75 says, how was the tour? The tour was great, but it was exhausting. My boss has a habit of working me to death and turning days off into show days. You know who you are if you're watching. Let's see here. Scott123 says, I tried, but the Kool-Aid is strong. Scott, read a book called The Persuaders. It is all about the art of deep canvassing, where you actually have multiple conversations with people, where you just push the needle a little bit every time. You do more listening than talking. You meet them where they are. You find the things that you can agree on, and then you start slowly bringing them back from the brink. Also, you don't got to take somebody who's like a full MAGA pill all the way to a fucking AOC, liberal. There are plenty of people out there who are like on the fence voters, independents, and people who don't follow politics, that if you just bring them into the light, you could potentially get a convert there. So yeah, no need to do the hardest version of this work. Cave Dweller says, who elected Elon Musk? Money did. D.D. Delaney says, what about how Trump is keeping a $400 million plane and getting away with it? So that is still in the works. He will get away with it because the Republican Party is asleep at the wheel. Or they don't give a shit about all of the corruption and illegality of the Trump administration. They're either scared of him or they're on board with all the shit that he is doing. So, the people who would be holding Trump accountable for that are all Republicans. They are all elected Republicans in Congress, or they are Republican judges in the Supreme Court. So if you're upset about that, what you can do is put political pressure on them or vote for the people who will take them out of office. Vote for Democrats, and that will either replace Republicans in Congress, and if they get enough power, then they can potentially impeach justices or nominate better judges going forward. Jago Vargas says, do you support Hakeem? I don't know enough about the actual work that he does behind the scenes. I don't really care for the way that Hakeem communicates. I find him kind of corny and milquetoast. But people seem to like him, my philosophy is not to pick nits on Democrats when there are giant fucking fractures in the Republican Party that we need to address. Diego Vargas says, will we ever have the numbers to be able to pass meaningful legislation, or will the South be the impetus? I think is what you're trying to say there. Diego Vargas, you know the answer to that question. The answer is, it depends on if people do the work. If people like you and me do the work, and we get other people to do the work, then of course we can get those numbers, The pollsters will tell you that it is virtually impossible for us to get 67 seats in the Senate in 2026. I say let's aim for that. You want to punch someone in the face? Aim for the back of the head. That's my philosophy. Let's see here. Do you think the government should step in and break apart the meat packer conglomerate? Yeah, I'm against monopolies of all kind. So if the government can break up a monopoly, I think they should. All right, everybody, thank you for being here. My regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. I'm going to start and end early tomorrow because I got lunch with a buddy. But yeah, catch me here, same bad time, same bad channel. Have an excellent rest of your week, everybody. Do the work, and I will see you on the flippity flop. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.